Thank you, Gesho. I love that official recording in progress message we get before each talk. Hey, so good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Here we are in the third week already of this new year. So maybe you, like me, are kind of reviewing kind of the annual rituals that we go through, our resolutions, or maybe just trying to think about how we might use this year in a different way. Maybe break some old habits, maybe cultivate some new ones. And tomorrow, is the day we remember and celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. 54 years after his untimely death. His example of service to the beloved community, which includes all of us still today. I always think of him as offering a way forward for all of us, for us Zennies, and for all the people. He wrote an incredible letter, a trenchant letter to the Birmingham community when he was leading a demonstration, and the clergy in that community said, "Oh, that's unwise to cause that kind of trouble." And he explained to them in this letter that he wrote to them something that is completely, in my view, our Zen understanding of emptiness, our Zen understanding of interrelatedness, oneness. Here's what he wrote. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned with what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this is the line. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives here in the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. So when I read that every January, I realize how much work there is to do right here. Right here for me in this city, in this country, in this world. We are not outsiders anywhere. And we are called to serve over and over in our life, in this complicated, suffering world. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What brought to mind Dr. King's letter for me was last week's snow here in my city. It was very brief, but it was a dynamic reminder of the Earth's periodic way of showing us that we're all one. When I looked out my window on that morning, instead of the usual mix of dog walkers and people running off to the work or the gym, or shopping. Instead, I saw just a blanket of white covering all the surfaces, creating one white whole. Of course, just a little bit later, tracks appeared in the wholeness as the many, the components of the whole, appeared again as footsteps in the snow and then as slush. Like the relative reappearing on the face of the absolute. Like a mirror, now showing your face, now showing the world around you. In a way, I think if we practice diligently, we can see our lives in such a two-way mirror. Now reflecting our independent self, now showing the self as part of the universe. Quiet, the subtle snow covering everything, and individual tracks, making paths, active and determined. For me, I think Zen's most important teaching is that as we are alive, we have an opportunity. There is no other life, no other reality to enter, but rather right now. Here, where it is that we live our lives and where we serve life, which is actually mixed up with everyone and everything else. Of course, I think most of us are drawn to Zen or were drawn to Zen because we want to have maybe a big experience, a kind of insight, or maybe because we feel that we want to heal ourselves. To free ourselves from our suffering. And both are possible, but not in the way we often think. When we begin to think of enlightenment as a thing to get, or a place to go, you know, we're really lost in an imaginary dream. And I think Zen teaches us this over and over and over again. Because we really have everything we need right now. It's a matter of recognizing. Just like Dr. King, we can experience ourselves as part of everything else, as interrelated. Every drop of water, every breath of air, every being that has ever lived and ever will live. We're part of all of that. And yes, we're responsible for all of that. We have the potential to heal ourselves. We have the potential to find joy in each breath. Still, it's really easy to be seduced into the idea that there's a place of emptiness, a place of oneness, that would be our own personal, blissful enlightenment, apart from what the world needs. So I, for one, am very grateful for the practicality of Zen that keeps us from falling into that delusion, that focuses on the very ordinariness of our practice. There is no other place to be. But that's tricky because, in fact, we do, through our Zen practice, find ease and joy. We do find our place in the universe. And we experience reality in a new and joyful way. So I'm getting to Shodoka now. As you may know, it is our study task. The Song of Enlightenment. And it's on our website under teachings if you haven't had a chance to download it. You know, and much of this poem is about the dream, the delusion of duality, of not getting lost in emptiness, of oneness, of blissful personal enlightenment. Here's a stanza from the poem. We know that Shakya's sons and daughters are poor in body, but not in the Tao. In their poverty, they always wear ragged clothing, but they have the jewel of no price treasured within. This jewel of no price can never be used up, though they spend it freely to help people they meet. In their poverty, they always wear ragged clothing, but they have the jewel of no price treasured within. Shakya's sons and daughters, of course, is a way of expressing those who follow the way. So that would be all of us. The path of the historical Shakyamuni, down to those of us on Zoom on a Sunday in the 21st century. So we are Shakya's children. Poor in body, but not in the Tao. You know, that's our ordinary imperfections, our simple bodies, some old, like me, some young, some fat, some thin, some with aches and pains, and still that body, that poverty of body is not poverty of the Tao. Poor in body, but not in the Tao. And in our poverty, we always wear ragged clothing. That ragged clothing stands out for me. You know, I mean, on one level, you could say it's the patched robes of the followers of Shakyamuni, and those of us who wear patched rakusus, which is what they symbolize, the poverty. But also, I think of it as our ragged parts. We wear our ragged parts so they can be seen. We wear our vulnerability so that we can encourage others. No matter how raggedy we may feel, we all have a priceless jewel hidden within our heart, hidden within our imperfections. If we wait until we're perfect, we will never act. We need to realize the jewel is always there. As Dr. King counseled us in another speech, we must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. And I would just add to that, but we must serve. We must take care of those in need. We can't wait until we have the perfect solution. In a later part of the verse of the Shodoka, the jewel is likened to the moon that shines over all waters and is reflected in the vast ocean, is reflected in the Great Lakes, is reflected in the ponds, in the drops of dew, in the puddle of piss in our streets. The moon is reflected in each of us. And that is the jewel of no price that is treasured within. And what is significant about that jewel is that it says, the jewel of no price can never be used up, though they spend it freely to help people they meet. The jewel can never be used up, though they spend it freely to help people they meet. We can't exhaust it. The more we share, the more we serve, the more we give, the brighter and clearer the jewel manifests. Think about that. Here's Dr. King. He wrote in another speech called The Drum Major Instinct, which I love. I encourage you to read that one. It's quite wild. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. You know, when we help each other, we help ourselves. Dr. King understood this. You know, he could have been comfortable in his church. He didn't have to do what he did for this whole world and continues to do to this day with his encouraging words. When we see difference, and I've spoken about this recently over and over because there's such difference in this country. Instead of immediately falling into a reaction or immediately falling into anger, we can offer ourselves just a moment of quiet, a moment to find ourselves, a moment to recognize our mutuality, our connection. And from that mutuality, we can find a path of healing for ourselves and others. Whatever role we may have in this life. Perhaps we're caring for a friend who's depressed or ill, or we're a chaplain, or we write letters to prisoners, or we protest, or we're Zoom monitors, newsletter writers. I could just list a huge number of administrative tasks just to get this Zoom thing going for the Village Zendo and for so many people who participate and benefit from it. There's so many service positions that we have in this group and in the world. And there is the jewel of no price that sustains us. It is the jewel that just gets brighter with each undertaking. It is the joy of service. Even now, just this week, our Village Zendo is starting to form a support group for Afghan refugees here in the city. As the refugees come and settle into a life in New York. What a decision that is. Doshin, Chad Duchamp, is heading up the project, and I encourage you to contact him if you're interested to join with us in this project. It's a nourishing way to serve. we can welcome these refugees from that long war into our city, into our communities. They have kids that'll be going to schools, they'll have to find jobs, they'll have to make friends. And what we can offer is really very simple, ordinary. How to access common resources at school, playgrounds, children's alliances, how to shop at the market. Simple, life-giving, heart-giving lessons that we can offer. We can help them fill out documents, apply for work, help them with their English. I encourage you to join our group. It's just forming now. You can find information about it on the IO list or by contacting Doshin directly. This is the way. We have an opportunity now to serve. Just as Dr. King, by being arrested in Birmingham, had an opportunity to offer a teaching to the world about service and responsibility. Okay, back to the Song of Enlightenment. The verse says, "The lotus lives in the midst of the fire. It is never destroyed." There, is the lotus. That's our symbol of enlightenment. Beautiful, exquisite lotus that emerges out of the putrefying mud. The lotus is enlivened by its periodic fires, just as the leisurely one manifests activity in the world. The lotus is a beautiful, extraordinary flower. And it blooms in the home of a new immigrant in a solitary confinement cell in a broken heart. The lotus blooms with a new job, a new school, a new neighborhood. It blooms in our sad heart. It blooms on a bad day, even in the midst of neglect. All it takes is to realize it. Say to yourself, in the midst of this shit, a lotus of love and understanding is blooming. So that's not an exalted, abstract idea of emptiness, of the absolute. It is enlightenment in our everyday life. And this is how the Song of Enlightenment encourages us to allow our raggedy selves to be suffused with the wisdom of the way, to act, to serve the world. So who is the leisurely one? Isn't it you, yourself? When you are in touch with your true nature, with who we say, with who you really are. Isn't it what some people call enlightenment? What can get solidified around some notion of emptiness, oneness. I think the image of the leisurely one is more on point. That part of us that responds spontaneously, freely, with an open heart. that part of us that's willing to take care of whatever we encounter. That recognizes both our uniqueness and our interdependence, and thus our responsibility. I think the leisurely one is exactly the one who realizes Dr. King's an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment, tied in a single garment of destiny. I think that's what and whom we serve. Freely flowing reality that includes everything, all creations. Dr. King understood this, and so should we. Or as Seicho said on her talk on Thursday, let's just keep showing up. Here is my gatha for today. Oh my, after all these years, suddenly I realized that what matters in my life is what I've given, what I've offered, how I've served, how I've loved.